So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about something that's really important to me, and it's how restoration matters in the context of a changing planet. I don't need to tell you guys about how amazing the world's coral reefs are. They're an organism we can see from space. They form together by the trillions to make one of the largest living creatures on the planet. And I also don't need to tell you the amazing things and the amazing habitat that they provide for so many fish, for so many organisms. They are absolutely amazing systems. I don't need to tell you that. I also don't need to tell you how important coral reefs are for not just being pretty pictures, but literally feeding large portions of the developing world. Coral reefs feed nearly 500 million people in Asia alone. And I don't need to tell you why reefs feed these communities. They provide their first line of defense against coastal storms and serve as a revenue generator worth nearly $10 trillion. What's often lost on many people, though, is how, for some countries, the reef is their entire way of life. For many countries, it's the lifeblood of their culture and their economy. It is their protector both physically and spiritually. And without it, those countries don't stand a chance. And it's not a question of if reef loss will destroy them. It's a question of what will come first: the loss of their economy, the loss of their culture, or the unmitigated waves. And as we know, reefs don't just benefit coastal communities. They provide life-saving cures that affect all of us, providing next-generation treatments for cancer, HIV, cardiovascular disease, and many more. And unfortunately, I also don't need to tell you the dire state that reefs are in. In the last 3 years alone, we've lost 50% of the live corals on the Great Barrier Reef. And the Great Barrier Reef was not the canary in the coal mine. It's the latest victim of a well-predicted mass mortality event that's been underway for decades and is gaining speed and intensity every year since. We've lost 50% of the world's coral reefs to climate change, and the rest could be gone in the next century. And that statistic is the same statistic that many of the critics of this field use to say why we shouldn't be focusing on restoration, that we should be putting all of our energy into addressing climate change. And unfortunately, though, even if we do put all of that energy into addressing climate change, we're likely to be left with a situation where we don't have any reefs left to restore at that point. Carbon already committed to the atmosphere is predicted to result in severe bleaching events for at least the next 3 decades. If we don't do something now to at least balance that system out, we're not gonna have anything left to restore. And I know that's an unacceptable answer for many of you. It's certainly an unacceptable answer for the billions of people that rely on coral reefs worldwide. And it was an unacceptable answer for many on our team. And so we sat down with experts on bringing species back from the brink to talk to them about what we needed to do. Talk to the people that have worked to bring giant pandas back, work to people that are working on captive breeding of elephants, all kinds of things. And what do we need to do? And what they told us was that to recover coral reefs, we needed to do 3 things that were actually backwards of traditional conservation thinking. As many of you know, we're often taught to take a cautious approach to restoration and interventions. But what they prescribed was that we begin to immediately rebuild populations with more diverse and resilient corals, that we work faster and more aggressively than we would ever think necessary, and we start sooner than we would ever thought we needed to start. Fortunately, over the last 15 years, many of you in this room have been slowly building the capacity to begin to rebuild some of these reefs, to begin to restore some of these populations. We have in-water and land-based farms that are now capable of producing tens of thousands of corals per year. And we have a number of restoration programs that have truly turned into farming mode, restoring reefs to their historic level of cover and function at the local level. The next thing we have to tackle is making sure the corals that we have for restoration, the corals that we have for restoration are going to stand up to those warming temperatures that are still to come. To do this, we have to help Mother Nature out a little bit. We already know that after every mortality event, there are winners and losers. We also know that repeated sublethal exposure to warmer conditions can make some corals stronger. By combining the evolutionary underpinning of survival of the fittest with the mantra of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, we might just be able to have corals that can survive the fever that is to come. while we've had some successes and made some really big differences at the local level, that hasn't quelled the critics of reef restoration, and nor should it, because on this next point, they really do have a point. Even if restoration can be part of the solution, the gap that exists between success at the local level and success at the ecosystem level is not big, it's massive. Continuing on the current path, it would take centuries to restore the world's coral reefs, and that is an unacceptable time frame, certainly. The Great Barrier Reef is nearly 1,800 miles long. When you think about doing restoration in that environment, it's going to take a lot more than 2 divers and a couple baskets of corals. And that last part of the puzzle is why we are all here at Reef Futures. We know restoration and resiliency are part of the solution. We know scaling up is needed. We know the challenge is just as much about engineering as it is about biology. What we don't know is how to get our local successes to be global solutions. We need crazy ideas and the people that can turn those crazy ideas into breakthroughs. The status quo means losing the world's coral reefs. Carbon mitigation by itself means likely still losing the world's coral reefs. Those are both unacceptable answers. I am a firm believer that we need to address climate change and work to aggressively restore reefs at the same time. The challenges we face are very similar to those that have been overcome in other fields. Those of us that have looked closely at the problem firmly believe the tech exists to solve this problem. The problem is we don't have the right people sitting in the right room at the same time to solve it. For the first time ever, we do here at Reef Futures have the start of that. And now we need to go out and bring more and more people into this community and help get them to solve this problem, to help with this massive scale up. The challenge is huge. The goal is audacious. But saving the world's coral, or saving coral reefs, might just help save the world. And so with that, I want to kick us off to a great conference.